Hi guys. I've been thinking about female-only spaces because I love them, but I worry that female-only spaces means men-only spaces. So I'll just talk through what I've been thinking about. The bullet point is female-only spaces are good, male-only spaces kind of bad. But let's discuss. I've had various discussions around female-only spaces, and I've heard women saying, "And men have their spaces too, and that's great." But I just think that that's a bit flippant and is just said to sound fair or reasonable or whatever. But with the exception of like toilets and changing rooms, that sort of thing, I think it gets a bit more dicey when we look into it. Example one, and the one that leaps most to mind for me, is single sex schools. I did go to an all girls school, and that's maybe an interesting discussion for another time. But amongst the cons, there were some big pros. And in general, girls' schools do have really good outcomes for us. Anecdotally, I could see the difference in adherence to gender roles between friends of mine who went to the girls' school and those who went to the mixed school. There is a lot to discuss here, but I'll be brief and I'll move to what I observed at the neighbouring boys' school. The boys at the mixed school were still awful, but I think by having to actually engage with girls, they realised that we are human to some extent. But the boys' school boys were just awful and were also enabled by some really sexist teachers, which again is interesting to contrast with our, I would say, a lot of them quite feminist teachers who really wanted to instill, good feminist lessons into us. And what I'm trying to say is that here we have an all girls school, so we need an equivalent boys' school, or there'll be way too many boys in the mixed school, and then the girls will be a much smaller proportion, and they'll be used as a buffer for the boys, and they'll be receiving even worse treatment. So that's really unfair on the girls that have to be in the mixed space. Um, I mean, it's unfair that you know, half of the school population are being used as a buffer for the other half, but hopefully you see what I'm trying to get at. What I'm basically saying is that if all the women go somewhere by ourselves, then the men are left all by themselves, and they just enable each other to be bigger and bigger dickheads. And when they're adults, that's when they make the under the table deals and governmental decisions. Men already have private spaces, and even again, there are so many anecdotes of women being socially locked out of business deals because these businessmen want to socialize at strip clubs after work or just have like a boys club mentality that means that women don't get invited. Men find their own spaces to talk about us demeaningly. They enable each other's sexism, and unfortunately, due to them being in influential positions, they make the big choices about running the world without us there. Um, there's also a small point to add about by being in an all girls school, I ended up very naive, I think, about some of the way that men can be in the world. And I had a very long chat with the counsellor about this, and she kind of pointed out that, yeah, you had no male friends until your 20s. You don't know like, how awful men can be. Um, I'm not sure what the solution to this is. I don't know if it needs a solution. I'm just throwing it out there as a thought. Um, the final point is female only spaces are really important. I have been in a few, either by coincidence or purposefully, and they are always, always, always magical. Please go and enjoy one if you can. They are fantastic, particularly if there is some art and crafts involved as part of it. May I highly recommend that. But yeah, female only spaces means that there's going to be male only spaces, and those spaces are real bad. Thoughts, feelings, opinions. See you next time.